Hello, I'm Li Hao. Welcome back. We've been working on a client-side routing libraries in Svelte over the past few videos. And if this video is the first video you're watching, then you're missing out a lot because we are towards the end. So please do catch up. I'm pasting the link of this whole playlist in the description section, so you can just click on the link and catch up all the things that we have talked about so far. So let me just do a recap on what we have done so far. We have basically managed to write a client-side routing library as well as a file-based routing based on that. So we have a script that analyzes the folder structure or your routes folder structure and generates a routes definition. And we use our client-side routing library to take in the route definition and does client-side navigation for us. So in this video, we basically do some cleanup or add some small features, which is to have a store that you can import from anywhere in your code, such that you can subscribe to the current page URL, the current page route ID, as well as the current page parameters, right? So this information, we spread it or we pass it in to your routes component as props. But for some components that is being imported from your page component, you don't want to pass them along. You want to just, maybe it's too deep, you don't want to go through like a prop drilling where keep passing one props to another props over and over again. If that's your use case, then you can import this store, and this store should always be updated with the latest props and routes information. Right, so we're gonna write that store. So hopefully, if you're very familiar with Svelte stores, I guess this is more of recap or maybe like a practice. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. Sorry to jump in, but I got an important thing to tell you, which is that if you're following along, coding along with me, the code for all this is on the GitHub repo. Link in the description. Just follow along. If you miss any steps, each changes are in individual commits. So you can just check out that commit and take a look at what you are missing. Now follow along. So over here, let's collapse our folder structure. We've did all our programming in this lib routing folder. And in this $ folder is where we have our file-based routing. Routes is where we had our previous components when we are developing our client-side routing library. Params is the params function that we can validate and match, test the parameters value. Yep. So here in any place in our code, say like this, in one of the routes that we have, we could import other files, right? We can import full from, let's see, from here, right? Components, and then full. Oops. Dot svelte. I can use this component like this, and we can create this component called full. Oops. Should be component / full. And here in this component, we don't want to pass in all the props that we have, like the shop ID and stuff. We want to just import from somewhere. And I'm going to call it a page. And we want to basically get like page dot a params, page dot say URL, page dot route ID. These three things. That add maybe like a list element, list item, make it like a unordered list over here. So basically this is what we want to do, right? So just now when I walked through you to the folder structure, I mentioned most of the things over here is in the lib routing, right? So I guess we should import from somewhere within a lib routing. Lib routing. And I'm going to create a file called maybe star.ts. So this is going to call lib routing store here. Of course, it does not export a page, so we're gonna export that now. Const page equals to subscribe. So this is a store, right? It's a store. So we're gonna say this is a subscribe method. And what does it subscribe to? How do we do that? Well, basically, I'm gonna use we're gonna create a writable store, and I'm gonna create a writable store, and this one exports out this page. So this is just the we're just gonna have the subscribe method. So this is just gonna be a read only of that writable store. So we're gonna have a writable store and pass that subscribe function over here. And that writable store, I think we can just maybe define it in this file. Okay, I'm gonna define it in maybe let's see, how should I do this? So this should be like something like a public API when you can import. So I don't want to export another writable store, then it will just confuse the user. If I have writable store like this, page equals to writable. I was thinking of doing something like this, but then I have to also have this handle of this to update the value. So meaning I would also have to kind of export this page out, but then would mean there will be 2 exports from this file. Maybe it'll be confusing for the user. So I'm thinking maybe this should import, this whole store should be exported from somewhere, and we should just import from here. So I'm thinking creating a maybe like a sort of internal file called _store that stores this one, and we can import this page from this in kind of like internal store, and we also import this page, this internal store, from our routing library as well. So this is where we're gonna update this value. So URL, okay, so let's update this. So when we match routes, then we're gonna set the value with the current path name as the URL. Let's see, here. Okay, we're gonna only update this after we've successfully loaded our components and we're gonna render our components. So we're gonna update the store only over here. Here, page.set. Gonna set new value. URL is the path name, the current path name. The params is actually this, right? Match routes, params. And route ID is actually something we don't have. Yeah, I'm not really we don't really have it yet. So I think the route ID is actually the file name, the relative file name. Yeah, the relative file name, so that, you know, like if this is the routes we match, then the URL is the actual URL, right? The shop shop/shop ID 123, but the route ID would be shop/shop ID. So that, yeah, so this is gonna be the route ID, and if we look at the generated code, we don't have that information anywhere to be found. So of course we have to generate it. So here temporarily we're gonna say it in the routes. We have URL, params, components. We also have a route ID, which is a string. Assume it is here now, then I can use the match route dash route ID like this. So match route could be not matching any routes which is not found, then in that case this route ID will be undefined. Same goes with the params, would be also probably be undefined in that case. So here we update this page right now. Of course we have to figure out how to update this, but in the meantime let's see how is the thing going. So we're gonna start our dev server. Right, where did we have this? So we have this thing in our, okay, how about this? Let's just add it in the layout so that it's always in a root layout, so it's always there. What's our component again? This foo, right? So let's import this foo in our root layout, because we should not have this here, right here, and this file path I have to change a bit. Okay, let's refresh. Something is not right. Where are we? In the home page. Home page is this index.svelte. Should see something. Why are we not seeing anything? Let's take inspect elements. See, is there any error? Okay, there is error. Console page is not a store with a subscribe method. So you can't import. Okay, so page is subscribe. Okay, typo. Let's fix this. Okay, so now the parameters is an object. So let's just do JSON stringify. So params is this thing. We go to ABC, we update the URL, right? And if I go to say something like shop 123, then params is this shop ID. If I go to James Bond, this params is this shop ID and item ID. URL is this, route ID is something to be figured out later on. If I refresh this page, slow down the network, throttle the network to slow 3G. Then if I try to click on, say, other page, then it slows down, it's loading, and then when it's loaded, then only this gets updated, right? So this always reflects what you see on the screen, the current URL and the parameters, right? So that this is consistent of everything else that you see on the screen. Let's just stop throttling and go back. And now let's figure out the route ID. Over here for route ID, what we need is that in our generator script, that's just basically, it's the relative path, isn't it? So where was it? When we generate this URL, relative path, the routes. Okay, so let's take a look at the it is the relative path without this svelte. So route ID is equals to JSON.stringify relative path dot replace svelte to empty string, and it has to end with dot svelte, right? Only replace the svelte suffix, comma over here. Let's try to generate the route again. Yarn run npm run generates. Okay, we generate our routes, and let's try run dev. In the meantime, let's take a look at our generated code. Generated. Right, the route ID is now this one, which is whatever file name we have. So let's go over here and take a look at, let's refresh. So this is the route ID. Let me just make it even more obvious that let's just wrap it around with a quote. So this is the route ID. If I change to James Bond, then this is the route ID where you see that there's like some parameter matching. And if this is ASDF, then this matches another different route ID. That's cool. So we have params, URL, and route ID. And if you, basically we managed to create a page store. And if you look at this svelte-kit, there's also another store that is related to routing, which is the navigation store. So navigation store gives you, it's undefined in most times, but when you try to navigate around, then it turns into an object where it has a from and to, where you are navigating from and where you're navigating to. It's more obvious if the network is very slow and you realize that in that transition, you see that navigation, it has a from and to, try to navigate from one place to another. Right, so for that, let's also go to our store and create that store. So we're gonna have a navigation store which is writable and initialized to now. Gonna export that as well. And over here in our public API, we also would want to have the navigation, and so exports navigation to use the navigation subscribe. So both of them are readable. So here, let's see, here we're basically gonna this navigation store. Have we imported? Yeah, we've imported. We'll have the from and to, and once we finish loading, we're gonna set it back to now. And what is from, what is to? Well, to is quite simple, it's the path name. But what is from? From is the previous path name, and I think we did not save that, so we're gonna save it right now. So this is the previous or the current path name. So this value only changes when we finish loaded the path here. So here, after we finish loading, we set, updates everything, we render the components, and of course we have to update the current path name to path name. So by default, it starts with undefined and navigates to somewhere. And after that, you see that it navigates from that place to another place. And you'll update this value after we finish loading and render the latest URL content. So of course, here the foo, we also want to import the navigation. And I'm gonna have another, okay, we have the same list. Here, we are going to json.stringify the navigation store value. So let's see, right now is, okay, let me add navigation. So right now it's null, refresh is null, and as we navigate, it flickers a bit, and see it changes from the URL from where to we navigate to. But if the network is slow, let me go to say this page. If network is slow, let me throttle my network speed. I'm gonna throttle to slow 3G. Then if you try to navigate, then you see this trigger from to, and then when you navigate the to, and then it's back to null again. So you see a from and to, it's slow, right? Slowly updates. And yeah, and actually this navigation bar that you see just now actually can be controlled with our loading indicator, can be controlled with this this store and state, right? We can actually import this navigation store, and then if it's true, then we show our show to show our indicator, and if it's false, then we hide our indicator. We can do that, then it's more streamlined, where we don't have too much logic in our routing library. We just update this navigation. Sorry, let me open the right place here. So we don't have to show and hide. Basically, when there's a value, then we call the show, we can subscribe to this store, and when it's not null, then we show a loading indicator. And when it's null, then we hide the indicator, right? We can do that. Then it's much streamlined, I guess. That's the word that I was thinking. But I'm not going to change that. So that is to leave as your own exercise. So basically, in this video, we created two stores, the page and navigation stores, which will always be updated every time when we try to have some sort of navigation within our routing library. And we export only the a store that's only the subscribe method, so that this is only readable from the user's perspective. cannot change, and this is only updated from within our routing library. So that's it for this video. And the next one we're gonna coming up is just gonna do another cleanup, which is to go to create a file watcher to watch our routes folder, so that whenever we make changes within this folder, we don't have to run npm run generate again. It generates it auto watches and generates a new sets of routes definition for us. And I guess if you want to know when that comes out, then subscribe to my channel so that you get notified when the next one is out. So see ya, bye bye.